What the hell's all this racket?
Sir, I just got word from planets. The hype train never arrived.
What the hell? How's that possible?
Well, I'm not quite sure, but from what I've been told, it's coming back to Conjecture Station, and it's not stopping.
What? A failure? That's impossible. The chances of a failure on a hype train are 1 in 1.5 billion.
I know, and I've double-checked, I've triple-checked, but... Sir, what should we do? Hey guys, Morphologist here.
What's up, guys? It's Wasted Space.
And that was a weird entry.
It was
because...
a really... Hey guys! I am Morphologist Space.
And that's because... So much for injecting more personality. Anyway, the reason why I did that is because this is not a usual Patchology, because we have so much to talk about, versus the virtual desert that we had before for Patchology series, that we can't even fit in all the topics that we want to talk about. So today, instead of talking about 1.105, the anniversary patch, we're going to talk about the anniversary stream.
Hell yeah, which was absolutely amazing. And if you guys didn't see that stream, a lot of what we're going to be talking about is kind of our opinions of what happened in that, which was really cool. But if you don't know the facts of the matter, I did a video that came out yesterday, literally just running down what did we learn. And it's like 12 minutes long, and it will tell you, as far as I could manage, everything that they talked about during that stream. You get a few ideas of what it looks like as well. So if you haven't got any information about the stuff we're about to talk about already, kind of recommend you go and check that first, because we'll try and fill you in, but as Morph said, it would be like 2 hours of talking if we really tried to discuss everything.
And to be fair, actually, Wasted's been really working hard this weekend and paying attention to this. Unfortunately, I have been busy in my real life with my grad school work, because I'm not full-time, but anyway, the gist of it is that I didn't get to check out the live stream in person. Otherwise, I'd have joined Wasted. So what I did is I actually watched that video, and personally, after watching the stream as well, I found your video a lot more informative. So if you guys wanted to get like a quick highlight reel with all the best parts, all the information in 12 minutes, really go check that out. In fact, we're going to operate on the premise that you guys have watched that, and again, just focus on the things that we are really excited about for planets.
Yeah, all right, cheers, dude. And it's also probably worth mentioning, I am absolutely exhausted. I basically spent this whole weekend just going planets mad and doing that stream and analysis and making videos and so on. So I apologize if I'm a little out there on this episode, but hey, exciting things about planets. What you got, Morph? Where are we starting with this?
Well, I just want to say it also doesn't help that you're recording for 10 minutes, but you weren't recording, and so we just, we're talking.
No. What you got, Morph? What you got?
Okay, so what do I have? I want to talk about first, probably the most exciting thing, is what Mark said. He probably said it best when he said that they are going to reinvent how we experience space engineers. And that speaks volumes about what planets will mean and all the other little tricks and things they're going to add in later for our experiencing space engineers.
Yeah, that's a deep statement. And actually, I think for some people it might even be kind of worrying. Like, reinvent space? I kind of like space engineers. Thanks, Mark. Do you want to step back a sec? But no, I think what we're looking at there is this whole idea that we now kick off on a planet's surface. That's where we start. We start on the ground, and we got to go skyward, and everything is going to be a much more what's the word? A staged experience.
Tiered?
With state of tiered experience. It's that sort of idea that you're not just boom, here's everything all at once, go.
Or actually though, teching up.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's interesting and pretty damn cool that we are now starting to see a pretty dramatic change in space engineers as far as its sort of evolution is concerned, where we've gone through this period where I think a lot of people have talked about it as of all intents and purposes, it's like this physics sandbox / tech demo. I've heard that phrase used before. It's a pretty harsh one, I will say, but at the same time, you kind of get what they mean. It's like, well, there's all this stuff you can do, but where's the purpose? Well, if we wanted a purpose, here's starting to show it to us.
Yeah, and my imagination's already starting to go. I was just thinking the tiered sort of teching up. Can you imagine flying through space after you've accomplished everything? Then you fly past a planet full of noobs who are just starting off, and you can fly by like all snobby, like, ha, look at these undeveloped human beings. Let's drop some spiders on them, see what they do.
Yeah, they're rocking around with their puny atmospheric thrusters. I've got hydrogen for days.
Now, I was going to say, it's worth talking about this line of thought now, like just what it means now that you're starting on planets. And one of the things that was mentioned in the live stream, well, at least yours, was the suits, and that we're going to have different types of suits and maybe even none at all.
Well, yeah, this was pretty, like, we didn't get much information about this. I only touched on it in the breakdown video because all they basically said was, that's what we want to do. There's something we're really looking at. We don't really know what we're going to do with it yet, but this whole idea of you could have a construction suit and you could have a light mobility suit, and maybe you could have a suit that's more suited, because, you know, remember, these jetpacks are now going to be using hydrogen fuel. A suit that's more suited for long distance flight, like a squirrel suit, maybe even.
A suit that's more suited?
A suit that's more suited, yeah. The squirrel suit, dude. Squirrel
suit, yeah, for like atmospheric. Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be really cool.
How cool would that? I mean, we're going a bit Just Cause on it, but still.
The possibilities seem to start to become endless because the modding community is just so great. But that's a whole nother topic. But I think what we can also draw from this, possibly, is that the survival process may end up starting with you not even having a spacesuit, which means you're going to have to make your own spacesuit as part of the teching up experience of space engineers, which is pretty interesting.
I'm going to throw this out there quickly because I know there will always be some people that are like, well, I don't want to be forced to do that stuff. You know, I kind of like it as it is. I like being able to go out there, do my thing straight off the bat. It sounded like pretty much all of this stuff is going to be optional stuff. So much like with the drones and all that sort of thing, it's something you can tick on and off for the most part. And certainly they did also say that stuff like your jetpack not functioning in gravity wells doesn't exist in creative.
But I think it's worth mentioning that if you're not going to start on planets, you're missing out on a lot of the game, because I think there's a lot to be had and a lot that we will get in the future, judging by what kind of features they were talking about adding once they get planets off and rolling for us to actually experience and test out. So some of the other things that were mentioned that I think are really cool as part of the taking up process were the 3 different types of thrusters. Now, you covered it, pretty thoroughly in your video, but I think it's worth saying they're pretty darn cool because you get atmospheric turbines, so they're really cheap that you can use as like your first starting off to fly around the surface. Then you get hydrogen thrusters, which are you basically have to create a series of items. Like I think it's an oxygen tank and oxygen generator, and you have to get your own hydrogen from that to make hydrogen fuel to pump into a hydrogen tank to power these hydrogen thrusters. And this is like the only way you're going to be able to really get off planet surfaces as well. And then finally, once you get into space and get yourself some very rare uranium, you can make yourself some ion thrusters, which are super efficient, the ones that we've had for so long.
Yeah, efficient, not that powerful. I mean, it does seem like if you want to get something moved quickly, it's always going to be those hydrogen thrusters that are the big daddies. But, you know, the ion thrusters have been fitted into this nice space. I like how they've kind of made the thrusters that we've been used to all along actually have their own individual place in the scheme of things. You know, they don't seem outdated or useless. They very much are the efficient one that you can kind of use anywhere, unlike the other two that have some pretty smack-on weaknesses. Atmospheric thrusters can only be used on a planet. You know, they're a turbine engine. And one thing that's worth mentioning, actually, they did also say that the graphic you can see for the atmospheric thrusters looks really damn cool. I really like it. But you can see blades on the top of it. They aren't animated at the moment. They will be. So that's pretty cool. And just generally, I love how the three blocks kind of mesh together in a way that, it's that rock, paper, scissors idea. That means that none of them are perfect, but you're going to want to experiment with your designs. You're going to want to try out different ways of doing things. And that's, for all intents and purposes, that is a 3 times multiplier on the number of different ways we can approach an idea, which for me, as a kind of designy builder, that's awesome. Damn, I'm excited.
So you're going to have to build purpose-built ships, like ships for atmosphere. Like you can build an all-purpose ship, but you're going to end up having like tons of stuff sticking off your ship, and it's going to feel kind of weird and maybe even impractical. So you're going to have to really start to rethink your designs and become really creative, which is really interesting to me to have that sort of thing that you have to play around with and really think about. And that brings back some engineering, I think, to space engineers.
You can build rocket space planes now. You can build a hybrid space plane that has atmospheric thrusters to get it up to the point where it's leaving the atmosphere and then switches over to its ion engines, or maybe even a hydrogen. But then if you use hydrogen, hydrogen's heavy, so that makes it more difficult to get off the ground. And it's good.
Oh yes, you're gonna have to start to make sense of things by weighing your options and seeing what's more efficient, and it's gonna make it actually kind of a fun challenge to play with your friends in survival, just to see what you come up with to get off like more efficiently, like how you get off the planet versus what your friend did. I find that really interesting. But I think now it's also worth saying that you're not going to be alone on planets, and I'm not talking about other players. We've known about spiders since actually a while. At first as sort of a joke, we thought, and then eventually confirmed in the last patch, and now we've got a lot more information on them.
Yeah, although I would like to make a public request, and that is, these things have 6 legs, goddammit. Everyone knows it. They can see it. They've got 6 legs. They are not spiders. These are sabroids. We know they're sabroids. Let's just call them that. So we avoid this argument completely. Hello, comments. I'm talking to you. Yes, we know they've got 6 legs. Yes, they're not spiders. They're sabroids. So moving on from that obvious point. They are an interesting gameplay element, but I think there's a few other things that we can probably talk about them that were specific to some of the stuff that happened on my stream rather than on the Space Engineer stream.
Yes.
That make them kind of more interesting.
Well, I think it's this. You should talk about your own stream, because I could say what I learned from you, but I think you'll probably say it best. But I want to say that my reaction to it when I heard was extreme excitement. Okay, go, Wasted.
All right, I'm going to hit them out there. We're going to go hard hitting. First up, sabroids like flesh. Yeah. Sabroids like your flesh. And apparently they don't seem to mind a huge amount whether you're alive or dead. So they'll come and kill you.
To keep your enemies. Keep your enemies' bodies.
And eat your corpse.
At least you won't have to worry about cleaning up your corpses whenever they get in the way of you building. Well, they'll probably do it for you.
What it does mean, though, just looking at it from a practical perspective to begin with, it means that, they're not after your buildings, your ships, your structures. They do seem to be capable of doing something about your buildings and your ships and your structures. One thing that they did mention was this idea that they'd been testing sabroids a bit on, obviously, their developmental builds. And at one point, one of them had hit one of the little small blue ships you get on the Easy Start world. They're little fighter things, basically. They've got a couple of Gatling guns on the front of them. And snapped it in half.
So if you think if that's your body, you'd be dead. Very dead.
Oh, I'm also thinking, well, that's interesting. So I'm going to want some turrets on my base. Just having a door, that might not necessarily be enough. So I don't think, there wasn't a huge amount else, to be honest, they gave away about the sabroid stuff, other than this is something that's going to be scary. We talked a little bit with the fella that actually was sort of the key guy behind the sabroid design. And he was just talking about how he found them legitimately scary. He found these things legitimately worrying. So looking at it from that perspective, that's kind of cool from a gameplay perspective. We talked so many times in this series about the idea of needing a threat. Well, it looks like the threats are starting to come en masse, because we've now got pirates, drones, and spiders, and NPC fleets from modders.
Sabroids.
Sorry, sabroids. Jesus. Failing my own test. No. But end result is, look at the threats come. Obviously, these are things you can turn on and off. They definitely confirm, by the way, if you don't want spiders, you can turn them off. But I can't wait to have a scenario where we're playing that Starship Troopers thing and our survival base needs to be built up damn quick because you never know when the spiders are going to come. Is that right?
Now, you forgot to mention 2 things, though. One thing is that they're fast, and the other thing, probably more important, is that they burrow. They can go underground, and that means pretty scary things, actually. But also, wait, there's a third thing. They're not going to be on every planet, apparently, either. There was sort of mentioned that you can know to avoid certain types of planets. They didn't say what kind. They didn't say if it's going to be on Mars-type planets or if it's going to be like Earth-type planets. But they said a type of planet is going to have them, and you probably want to look out for those. But there's probably going to be, like, I'm just guessing here, valuable things on said planets that may encourage you to go to the Sabroids planet.
The Sabroids planet. I think it needs a better name in the long run than the Sabroids planet. But yeah, whatever that is, there's got to be a reason for you to want to go there. Otherwise, you'd just be like, nope, I recognize that one. That's the one where you get your face bitten off. Let's not go there. Let's go to somewhere else a little bit safer. I mean, all in all, this is just looking like it's adding a huge amount to that actual experience of playing Space Engineers. Because right now, we've all got to admit, the experience of playing Space Engineers in survival has been very much quite a lot of frustration at the length of time it takes you to mine and get components. And then you build some stuff until you can mine and get components quicker. And then you go, cool, I can get my components a bit quicker now. What should I do next? I guess I'll build a bigger one?
And then ram it into other things and then it rocks and blah.
And then when you get over to creative, it tends to be just, okay, so what could I come up with today that I haven't built yet? And both of these are fine, but both of these are being driven by you having to sit there and go, I want to do this, this, and this. And none of it's really challenging you in an intellectual way. And none of it's really pushing you to get into situations where stuff happens that you weren't expecting, and the game delivers to you something that, honestly, would be typically called like that sort of game idea. And I'm not saying that prior to this, Space Engineers has not been a game, obviously. It's just that idea that a game provides you with some sort of mechanic to push you through things. A bit like a story, although I don't expect Space Engineers to have one. That would be slightly unusual, but it's that idea of something to drive the gameplay.
And this might seem like a really stupid analogy. You can laugh at it all you want, but it's kind of like you've bought a kit car, or like you've bought a classic car, or like a car that you've wanted to work on, and you've been working on it for so long, putting on the parts that you want to do it, tuning up the horsepower, getting ready to drive. But then you realize that you've built it in the basement, and there's no way to get it out, and all you can do is sit behind the wheel and just go vroom, 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 and you never get to actually test it out against other people and racing and driving it out on the road. It's kind of like what Space Engineers is. It's like you build a great ship and you're like, okay, I'm done. Move on to the next one, because you really can't play with other people. There's no you can't go to planets. There's no purpose. You're just wandering around in an infinite field of asteroids and random things. So anyway.
Yeah. And that kind of segues really nicely into something that I'm super duper excited about. And it's kind of a bit more technical than some of the other stuff. And that is, I looked at this stream and was just blown away by the performance of what we were looking at, how it was running. I mentioned it in my recap video as well. But the way they've managed the LOD effects, which is the way models sort of scale their detail down as you get further away from them to help your performance, is, I would argue, one of the best I've actually seen. It's really smooth, really fluid, even on it's beta content. That we saw some problems with it, and it was all done through a live stream, and yet it still looked super duper smooth, super duper fluid, and was running really damn well. Now, this isn't something you can go, hey, new features, performance, but at the same time, it almost is.
And I do want to know, I do remember what they said on the stream. The computer they were running was a i7 4770K. with a GTX 780, which is a little bit, it's not the newest and fastest CPU or GPU. I would say it's about mid to higher range at this point in time. So you don't need like a dual Titan or a triple Titan computer with like a 16 core processor to run it well. You're going to be able to run it well on a pretty reasonably priced machine.
Yeah, a monolith resembling something from 2001, or not necessary. You can. It looks like you can get away with it, although there is with this strange caveat that it does look like Space Engineers and Keen in general are now starting to lean really heavily towards DirectX 11. And I've made a point of this in that video about the idea of DirectX 9 support, and it's worth mentioning to people, and someone made a really good point on my channel about this. DirectX 9 is like 10 to 15 years old. I didn't bother going and looking up the date. He said 15. That, to me, even seems too extreme. But it is ancient. And when we were back on DX7 and DX8, and I remember all this stuff, they were gone like within a year. They just disappeared. You DX7, yeah, fine. Yeah, it looks pretty. Right, now, DX8 is here. Quick, let's go on to that. And we've just been kicking around, and people still expect the DX9 support. And to some extent, that's great. Support as many people as you can to play the game. But you can kind of understand if they've made that decision to kind of really kind of focus their development in on the technology that is also pretty old. DirectX 12 is the current, not 11.
And also, it's worth noting that DirectX 11 and DirectX 12, the newer generations, don't just look better, but they have significant performance benefits over DirectX 9, which allows them to do a lot of the performance increases that you see to make planets possible.
Oh yeah, 100%. In particular, the way planets are being rendered, pretty much, it sounds like it relies on DirectX 11 to make it perform like it does, because they've utilized some of the functionality to enable it to kind of load procedurally, but without putting any impact on your RAM or your VRAM, which is getting pretty technical with it, but for those guys who do understand, that is a really big deal. And for you guys who don't understand, hey, it's a really big deal. That is a really key part of how performance works for games, and the thing that tends to bottleneck stuff, especially in games like this. So it's pretty massive. I feel really sorry for the guys that are going to turn around and go, well, hey, man, I got a DX9 card and I can't play the game anymore. Because that is harsh. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just worrying a little bit that as the development moves over, that's going to become the focus. But at the same time, the results for DX11 and the results for the performance of the game are pretty mind-blowing by the looks of things.
Indeed. You actually had a few more things I recall that you wanted to talk about, but more technically based in the game, not so much about the overall impact of having planets.
Okay, well, there's a couple of these. One I will cover pretty briefly because it's something that people kind of take for granted, and it's because the natural gravity mod has been kicking around for such a long time. Digi did this really good job of introducing what essentially planetary gravity is going to be like. Such a long time ago that everyone's just like, yeah, we know planets are going to have natural gravity, that's no big deal, whatever. It affects all the blocks, yeah, we know that stuff. But you actually go and see it in action in the base game on a planet's surface, and you watch the developers of the game take a landing gear, put it on the ground, try and put a cockpit on it, and it falls over. And it's just perfect. That is a really exciting development for me, because it means that now that stuff like orbiting is a real thing. All of those extra bits of mechanics are now real things that we have to worry about and give us more complexity in the game if we want to worry about them. I mean, you don't have to go out there and think, I can put things into orbit and that's going to be pretty cool. Maybe I'll go and try that. But you can if you want to.
And I think it's a more complete immersive experience overall to have those things happen. So I'm really, really excited for it myself.
Yeah, it's just another step away from the prototype and a step towards the actual full-on game, you know. One that everybody would turn around and go, well, I can see that's a game. It's for all intents and purposes, got a button-labeled single player rather than New World.
Indeed. Also, I don't know, we're running along here. I know we are. We have so much to talk about. There's one more thing that I do want to mention that I think is really interesting and probably it's worth mentioning because it's different than what we had imagined in the last Patchology, and that's planets are not procedural, meaning that they are crafted by the game designers. And so that's how they're able to come up with these mountain ranges and crevices and things that resemble more realistic geological formations. But more really what that means is that players are going to be able to mod their own planets, create their own version of Earth, or their own version of a science fiction planet. I don't know if you could ever make a Coruscant. It probably would blow the game up with all those structures. But, you know, if you wanted to make your own Hoth or something, that's definitely going to be possible. And then they'll start appearing, hopefully, in a world that you can explore, like exploration mode.
Yeah, for sure. And just the idea that you now have the creative control over this stuff. And we know Keen absolutely loves introducing content to the game that can then be passed on to modders to be able to go nuts with. And I can't help but get interested to see what they're going to do with stuff like the suits as well and the thrusters. You know, those atmosphere thrusters look pretty damn cool. What can the modders do with those? And also a bunch of stuff that they're opening up. I mean, I'm going back to the patch today, but there were a few things that they actually opened up to modders to be able to control and use that were really exciting. Same with some of the stuff in the planets update, the HUD stuff and so on. I mean, I don't want to get into that discussion because, as you say, this has run a long way already. But yeah, modding potential on top of what already looks pretty amazing, is got to be damn cool. We could come up with all sorts of cool things. And obviously, we're just thinking about how to recreate planets that we've seen from sci-fi influences and things like that. I mean, that's just the stage one. I mean, the next stage is I want to make an entire planet that's a maze. I want to make an entire planet that's a first-person shooter level. I want to... Yeah, all these things suddenly become possible in a way that doesn't require you to be like me and go and paint it with voxel textures.
You know, actually, I think this is a good segue into one other thing that I want to talk about before we wrap this up, and that's something you mentioned just before we started this, and it was kind of funny about green deer with rocket launchers. I'll let you explain that, but somebody mentioned in the live stream or questioned the devs while they were showing off planets, is this going to be a DLC? Obviously, this was a person who hadn't purchased Space Engineers, had no idea about the game, but to them, the difference between what they had seen before and after seeing planets was like a whole nother game. And it's worth saying that it is. It's like a whole other game. There's so much stuff that they're adding, so much moddable content that when we get it, it definitely... I mean, like, if they were a different company like EA, you could bet your bottom dollar that it would have been a DLC because there's that much content in it. And they've just been working so hard to put that out. It's really impressive.
Coming soon, Space Engineers 2. I know what you mean, and I loved the response to that as well, because Andreas, the fella who has been on Marek's blog and sort of talking about planets in particular and planet design in particular, was the one to respond to that, and he almost looked hurt by it, actually. Just the idea that someone would think they'd try and charge DLC for it, you know, and try and make people pay again. He looked honestly hurt by the question. So I think that should also tell you how much these keen guys care about both the success of Space Engineers, but also what people sort of think about the game itself and the feedback they get from their community. They are so linked into that stuff, even if it doesn't seem like it sometimes. You know, I do have the advantage of talking to them occasionally outside of, you know, this sort of scenario, and they're just so excited for their game, but also so intrinsically interested in what everybody in the community has to say about it, what everyone in the community thinks about it. And it kind of segues into this story, because basically we've been talking about how tired they were at the moment, because Planets is... They know it's later than it should be.
They wanted to come out for the anniversary.
They want it to come out. They wanted it to come out for the anniversary. They probably wanted it to come out before that, to be honest. But they're not going to release it until it's done. Until when it comes out, it's really good and we love it, which is great. It's the right move. But it means that they're all working themselves to the bone at the moment, super duper tired. And we were being told a story of how Thomas, the lead developer of Space Engineers, had at one point jokingly mentioned to one of the other employees in the office that he should go and add green deer into the game that had rocket launchers. And the guy was tired to the point where he didn't realize at that point that that wasn't a joke. And so we came pretty damn close, fellas, to having green rocket deer in Space Engineers. I think we're probably better off with the six-legged spiders, aka sabroids, than we are with green rocket deer.
You did it again, but you caught yourself, so it's forgivable. So now we've come to the point where we have to wrap it up, unfortunately, because we've already been talking for like 40 minutes, and we could probably keep talking because there's so much to talk about, but we would like to ask you now a question, and it has something to do with some food for thought that was given to Wasted during his stream.
It's a bit of a sneaky question, to be honest. And it was a bit of a sneaky teaser. But anyway, it was mentioned in a very coy and passing manner that there was something hidden on Mars. So you guys read into that statement whatever you want. What we want to know, what do you think it is? Because my mind is pretty blown by potential... I don't know what are the options there? There's so many potential options. So what do you guys think that little gem was? Something hidden on Mars.
Anyway, guys, it's been great. I want to thank you for watching this week's episode of Patchology. It was a long one, so thanks for sticking with us, and I'll see you guys next week when we definitely will be talking about planets again, because they'll come out this week. No, probably not. Anyway, thanks, guys.
Yeah, sure. We already know to blame you from last week, so I'm not buying
Hype
anything
train!
you say anymore. Cheers for watching, guys. We'll catch you next week. Thanks for sticking with us.